Hi, Amanda, and welcome to the interview. Thank you.
Hi, Marilee. I'm happy to be here with you. It'll be fun.
Would you like to introduce yourself to the people listening, just who you are and what you do?
Sure, absolutely. My name is Amanda Hinman, and I'm the founder of the Hinman Holistic Health Institute. So I'm a functional medicine health coach. I work with primarily women and a few good men who are looking to transform their health and really take their education and their empowerment back around how they can feel better and get rid of chronic symptoms and illnesses.
Right. When we spoke about doing this interview, actually, I asked about your own health journey, and it was quite interesting because you said that you discovered functional medicine not because of necessarily your own health journey, even though you had a diagnosis of your own. Would you like to tell us a bit about that? How you
Sure, thanks. Excuse me. Yes, I feel like my journey was a little bit of a two-part process. About 8 years ago, I was diagnosed myself with an autoimmune condition called Hashimoto's thyroiditis. And at that time, I now know better, but at the time I thought this doesn't make sense. This seems to come out of nowhere. How could this be? And I did work with my primary care physician who recommended that I start medication and just suggested that I would most likely take medication for the rest of my life to help support my thyroid. And something about that didn't resonate. So then I started to work with a naturopath and received some great suggestions and information about making nutritional changes, dietary changes, as well as taking several supplements to help my body get back into balance. And if I'm speaking completely candidly at that time, I think I wasn't quite ready to fully embrace and participate in the process. I wanted to feel better. I wanted my diagnosis to go into remission, but at the same time, I was feeling very resentful of all of these things I had to cut out of my diet and all of these supplements I was supposed to be taking every day. And I thought to myself, why, this doesn't seem to be very different than if I was taking another pill for supporting my thyroid. This didn't seem to be getting me to the place that I wanted. And then I kind of continued on that for 2 years, ebbed and flows. My numbers improved for a period of time, and then they slid back. So it was very unfulfilling journey during that 2-year time.
So despite making completely natural changes, you weren't seeing the results that you actually wanted to see.
Well, yes. I mean, I would say natural changes in the sense that I was suggested to go dairy-free, gluten-free. So at the time, again, and you have to understand, I was working with a doctor who was very well-intended, highly educated, really giving me, sound advice. But I was seeing this doctor once every 3 months or so. He gave me a list of foods that I shouldn't eat and supplements that I should take. And then I would see him 3 months later to retest my numbers and retest and see where things had changed. So in my mind, the changes, I had a big sweet tooth at that time. So in my mind, the changes were, okay, swap out the cookies and the brownies for gluten-free cookies and gluten-free brownies. I wasn't necessarily choosing a real whole foods centered diet that was nutrient dense. And I didn't necessarily know that at the time. I just thought like, okay, well, I'm not eating the gluten, right? So I was instead of eating whatever, the gluten-free crackers or the regular crackers, I was eating the gluten-free crackers. So I was kind of just doing those substitutions without really taking, an interest in learning what are the nutrients that my particular body specifically needs that are going to make it thrive. Right. So like I said, it was kind of it's a little bit of progress at first and then fell back off and felt even more frustrated and actually quite resentful from the whole, I'm like, here I am making all these changes and it's not working. But then fast forward 2 years later, and my oldest daughter, I have 4 daughters, so at the time she was 8, she had always been just somebody who was kind of put a lot of pressure on herself, high achieving, highly sensitive, and eventually her anxiety escalated to the point where she was having seizures, very significant seizures daily. And it got so progressive that she was having anywhere from 10 to 15 seizures in a day. And when I mean seizures, like merely to the point of where she was viscerally, convulsing and literally would fall over. If she was walking by, she would literally have a seizure and fall over. And I mean, it was very scary, to say the least. There were several times where her life was in danger. One time she had a seizure in a pool, and I just had to dive down and pick her up from the bottom of the pool. She's all blue. One time she was in a room by herself, had a seizure, fell over and cracked her head on a mirror. So at any point, like, her life was literally in danger. I'm sorry, I'm getting emotional thinking about it. But that absolutely compelled me to learn more, because when we were in the hospital for several days and she was having tests run, it was a place of, we didn't have answers. The pediatric neurologists, who highly specialized, skilled doctors, were saying there's just no discernible cause for this. We were told that, some people are more genetically predisposed to having this type of activity in their brain, and she will likely be on medication for the rest of her life to navigate it. And that, something as a mom, call it my like protective mom instinct that came out, but I was like, that can't, how is that possible? I don't understand. Like, I trusted that the body has this ability to thrive and to be in balance. And that's really what triggered my journey to become educated and to become empowered and learn how the body works in a much deeper way. And through that period of time, I actually invested in my own support, my own education, my own health coach, as well as we worked with a nutritionist specifically to support my daughter. And that combination of resources and support massively increased my knowledge and understanding of what was happening, not only in my daughter, but in myself, because I learned about specific nutrients and what they do in the body. I learned about hormones and neurotransmitters and what signaling things were actually taking place in both my body with the thyroid and her body with different neurotransmitters, and understood in a much greater detail the inner workings of the body. And quite honestly, like, it wasn't easy by any chance, because we still made some significant dietary changes with my daughter and also with our whole family at that time. Yet it was a completely different experience, because I started to feel inspired. I started to feel educated and empowered about what was happening and what we could choose to control, versus feeling this was just something genetically the luck of the draw and there's nothing you can do about it.
Right. But what made you decide to seek out the help of a nutritionist? What was the situation at hand with your daughter, or at least what were the circumstances that she was experiencing?
Honestly, it was desperation. It was complete and total desperation. She was, like I said, having 10 to 15 seizures every day. She was taking, and I kept going into the pediatric neurologist because she was literally layering medication to the point of where she was taking 4 different medications every single day, 12 pills as an 8-year-old, just to be able to make it through a 24-hour period with no episodes. So it was literally desperation. And talking with her neurologist, he was fabulous. I really appreciate and admire, and I respect that he was able to share with me what he clinically had information and had scientific evidence to support. So he said, I don't have evidence to support that other nutritional changes are going to be as effective or more effective, or I don't have the knowledge and the awareness of the studies that show mindfulness, stress reduction, things like that. But I wholeheartedly say, if that's something you're open to exploring, then let's try it. Let's see, because anything can be an improvement, right? And that's when I kind of just went on a journey of like, I'm going to research as much as I possibly can, and found this nutritionist out of Wisconsin, Karen Hurd. She's amazing. And she has world-renowned credibility. She's really helped people come back from cancer, from all sorts of autoimmune, everything. And she does everything strictly through nutrition. So what was interesting and what was different that really resonated with me, and I think at the end of the day, I think sometimes it's a combination and each individual has to find their path. But Karen's approach is one of purely using real whole foods. She does not actually suggest any supplements. So it was a very different process than what I had experienced 2 years earlier using a handful of supplements for myself. I actually think now, for many people, it's kind of a combination that works, because the supplements can sometimes help boost the deficits or the imbalances in the body a little bit faster than it would if you're just trying to eat all of that food. Yet what was so cool is that Karen had absolute certainty and faith in the body's ability to heal simply by giving it food that grows in nature. And she said, it's going to take a long time. Like, it took my daughter a year, but within a year, she went from 12 pills a day, 4 medications, to 0. Wow. Her pediatric neurologist on her last appointment was like astounded. I mean, he saw her titration and her progress, but he was like, and he was so sweet, because he was like, gave her, my daughter, a big hug. She's 9 at the time. And he's like, I'm so proud of you. You did this for yourself. You healed yourself. And it's amazing. I didn't think this was possible.
So you were making all of these nutritional changes. And you said it took her a year to get off all her meds, but how soon after implementing the changes, and it would be great if you highlight the kind of changes that you were making as well, before you started seeing the reduction in seizures?
Mm-hmm. How long was it?
Yeah.
Oh, it was a while. Like, it was several months. So I would say, I mean, it's a little bit hard to tell because she was on so much medication too. So we finally got her to a place of where that was stabilizing her. And, then we started to very slowly, because as you and I know, neurotransmitter activity is very highly sensitive, and hormone activity very, very gradually start to titrate her medication down. So I mean, I would say it's several months easily before the body really has an opportunity to go through a full mitosis cycle, where the cells are literally new cells that are being created from the nutrients that you eat, the foods that you eat. So your body is generating new cells. So several months, I would say probably 3 to 6 months before her body cellular mitosis was really changing over and creating a new structure, a new neural pathway in the brain.
Would you like to share some of the changes that?
Yeah, absolutely. So some of the key factors in our unique situation, and again, I can see that some of the similarities now that I didn't previously know, is that our family wasn't strict vegetarian by any means, but we ate very minimal animal proteins. Just as a practice, I personally had been in health and fitness arena for a while, and so my perspective at the time was that was more nourishing and healthier to eat more salads and less meats. And
it's also a common misconception that we need so much less meat, right? Than sometimes the body actually needs. And you can highlight that the demands on your daughter's body was so much higher than what she was getting. Right.
Exactly. And that was a key point. So again, I just said, like, I had a background in fitness, and I was a group fitness instructor for many, many years. My daughter was highly active. And at the time, I thought being active is the most important way to be healthy. So she was in competitive gymnastics. She was in competitive dance. She was in honors classes. Like, she was go, go, go. Literally, when I look back, I'm like, oh my gosh, I had an 8-year-old going from school to this practice, eating dinner in the car, and then going to this practice. So there was a high demand on her body, and simultaneously a high demand on my body from all the cardio kickbox classes I was teaching weekly, and strength classes, and then, taking care of 4 small children, and very physical demanding bodies. And both of us were low on our animal protein intake. One of the things is there are certain amino acids that are found in animal proteins in particular. You can also have the same essential amino acid profile in a combination of vegetarian sources. Yet the analogy I like to use is that it's like going to the furniture store and buying a dresser already made and then bringing it home and putting it in your bedroom, right? That's great. That's simple. That's efficient. That's easy. If that's what it's like when your body has some of the essential amino acids that come from animal sources. They're more similar in structure, molecular structure, to what our body needs to make a new cell. You can use those amino acids in combination to make a new cell from vegetarian sources like rice and beans, but it would be comparable to like going to IKEA and buying a box. And then you have to come home and like take all the parts, out of the box and assemble and make the dresser. Can it be done? Of course. Is it more work? Absolutely. So one of the key things that I didn't know at the time is that my body and her body needed to have the ability to make new cells quickly and efficiently. And we were actually making it a lot more work for that to be accomplished. And so our body was struggling.
Right. So the other thing is you probably, because you were talking about your diagnosis of Hashimoto's and how that wasn't so successful, or at least you weren't finding the kind of success that you were seeking. And that changed when you implemented all these changes with your daughter. Is that correct?
It did, yeah. So I was kind of like a side note. I didn't really think about myself that much at the time, but I was implementing a lot of what I was learning and being guided to support her. And so again, the key nutritional changes were being aware of having adequate amounts of efficient proteins, having adequate amounts of fiber to help our bodies detoxify appropriately, to have, again, specific vegetables that were really going to be beneficial for our antioxidants and our minerals and our vitamins. The other big significant changes that we made is changing our lifestyle, like truly making a shift in how we prioritize self-care and going to bed early, getting good, restful, deep sleep so that our bodies could heal. We even bought these grounding sheets that help us to stay grounded and really into a deep sleep at night for both my husband and I, and my daughter as well. Changing how, this is a big one for me, it was a little hard to let go, but changing how I perceived healthy exercise or activity. Because like I said, I had been a fitness instructor for years and was always doing super high intensity workouts. I used to believe it wasn't a workout if I wasn't dripping sweat by the end. And what I learned again about the nervous system and how the body works is that was actually counterproductive for my body, in particular with the Hashimoto's thyroiditis. Now, I didn't have that information the first time through because, again, I didn't have that type of support and guidance around me to ongoingly teach me and educate me about those things. But the second time I was learning that for my daughter, she stopped her competitive gymnastics. She took a break from some of her activities for a period of time. Still, would go out for family bike rides and a little bit more, just a different priority. I started taking up yoga and daily meditation. So the choices of the habits we were practicing shifted significantly in terms of stress management.
Right. It's so nice how you highlight that you gave the body the opportunity to heal itself by giving it what it needed, a little bit of rest and respite. Yeah.
And that's not always easy to do. Like my go personality wasn't prepared for that.
And there are so many people out there who have exactly that same outlook on fitness, and that all fitness is great for the body. And you and I know that sometimes too much is going to put too much stress on the body, right? The way you were telling your story, I think, is so important to highlight, because in the beginning you were saying that the 2 years while you were trying to make the changes for yourself, you just weren't quite getting there. And then you tell the story about your daughter and how much emotion was filled in that story, right? I think it's so important to highlight because when these changes are clearly not easy, these nutritional changes, and especially if you're going to be so intense to pull it through for an entire year, you've really got to have some sort of belief and grit to get through it. And you clearly showed that having a why and a reason to make these changes is what got you through it.
Absolutely. That was very compelling. And I think another point to highlight that I can only say in hindsight, right, is the first couple of years when I was making some adjustments to my diet and, seeking support, it was me, it was me on my own, my family, my husband. I mean, I love him to death. He's been my husband since high school, or my sweetheart since high school. But, everyone else in my family, my daughters and my husband and my parents and my siblings, like they were all just kind of going about their life like normal and kind of would make funny jokes like, oh, Amanda, what are you going to eat? You can't eat this, right? Like it was kind of like I was sometimes a standing joke of the family of the dietary changes I was implementing. And that's not easy. And it really led to me feeling more and more resentful around and deprived, honestly, around how I felt like I needed to live my life versus the people around me. So it was very isolating in many ways. And that, I think, is such a huge piece of the puzzle that I now know is your mindset is absolutely an imperative part of health transformation. And I didn't at that time have the knowledge or the awareness to surround myself with a support network that is going to be necessary to sustain those type of changes. Right now, that changed with my daughter simply because of the acuity, like the urgency of it, right? And also we had more acceptance from our family, even though our whole family now was making more significant nutritional changes and choices instead of just me. Like my parents and my siblings could see her viscerally have a seizure and were like, okay, you guys need to do whatever you need to do. There was a lot more understanding, right? When it was me with a thyroid hormonal imbalance, nobody can see that on the outside. So it's kind of more of like, whatever. They didn't understand it because they couldn't experience it. With my daughter, they experienced it and they were concerned. So they had a greater capacity to accept what we were doing to support her and ourselves. And also, again, I can't underestimate the value of having support. So for me, it was my education and it was working with a coach. Like literally, I worked with a coach for a year every week because I needed that mental mindset support so that I could be in a good place, so that I could be, instead of feeling, and there were many, many times where I felt overwhelmed, where I was just depleted, where I was so scared, yet I had this checkpoint to kind of just release that and to get reset and to be able to shift into being empowered because I was understanding things or being inspired even and kind of being excited to try a new recipe. Like, oh, here's an idea. Like, oh, I would have never thought of that. Okay, I can do this. Like I felt capable because I had that support in my life at that time, which I did not have the first time.
Right. So the one message that you would give to somebody who is feeling as alone as you felt with your diagnosis, because many people are in their family and they're the only one with such an autoimmune diagnosis, that one message that you would like to give to somebody who's perhaps thinking about taking the first step, what would you suggest as a possible first step for that person?
Yeah, I would say the first step is to start to become more informed about what's happening with your situation. So seek out some guidance, some support where you can start to understand the root drivers and the interconnections in your life situation, because everyone is unique. It's not a cookie cutter process. And then more so than even you think, it's worth it to invest in some type of support, whether you have a community around you. Sometimes there's, group programs that you can join or work with a coach or have a doctor who's willing to meet with you weekly, whatever it is, but have more. My biggest suggestion is to invest in more support than you think you need, because that it's not an easy journey, and that absolutely can be a game changer, because ultimately you want to feel better. And I truly believe that great transformation is possible for virtually everyone if they give themselves the chance to succeed with the right support around them.
Right. Finding the people that understand them, because if their family is not understanding, they need to find people that understand their situation.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for your time. For anybody that's listening that might want to get in touch with you, Amanda, how can they reach you? Yes,
absolutely. The best way is you can email me directly, Amanda at Hinmans, HINMANS.com, or always go to my website, Hinmans.com, HINMANS.com.
Perfect. Thank you so much. It was great to chat to you.
Yeah, my pleasure. You too.
Okay, bye.